Hello and welcome to the Autism Recovery Summit. I'm your host, Luminara Sirdar. And if you haven't already checked out our upgrade bonus package, go ahead and click on the link and look at what we provide there. You get the audio and video interviews, but we're also providing this amazing upgrade package. So go check it out if you haven't already. All the speakers, including our Robert Slovak today, who I'm about to introduce, will be on there, and you'll get to hear their presentations, their interviews again and again. And with that, I would like to welcome Robert Slovak, who is like the most expert water person I've ever met. And he's going to talk to us today about what you need to know about water treatment for drinking and bathing, and with a special emphasis on health compromised family members and water additives. But just to give you a little bit of background, I first heard Robert and heard all these stories, and I was so amazed. He is not your typical person in the autism world, like we think biomed and doctors. No, he has a degree in mechanical and astronautical engineering, and he is best known as the co-founder with his brother Jack of Water Factory Systems. This was in the early 70s and pioneering the reverse osmosis technology. So here you have it, one of the originals. And so he's done a lot of water purification design and seminars on that. He went on to bring his water knowledge and experience to underdeveloped international markets. And then when traveling in Brazil back in 2004, he discovered original ketone marine plasma, which he'll tell us about. And this is a type of ocean water, and we'll get more into this. And it just had a huge impact on his health, and being a water guy, like that was a big thing, I think. And then Robert attends medical conferences, wellness conferences, talks about water, invented Purative Incorporated, which was a company to help with water purification and help demystify all the things about water purity. He's going to talk to us about purification, about the ketone ocean water, and as well about molecular hydrogen and what that does in our water. So with that long intro, sorry about that. Welcome, Robert.
Good late afternoon, Luminara.
Yeah, thank you so much for being here, because I think everyone can benefit from your wisdom, experience, and knowledge.
It really is a topic of all seasons, because there's just not a lot of action in it in our paradigm of health and medicine.
Yeah.
You know how much hype there is, and everybody's got a different opinion. Everybody's got the best system, and facts are few and far between in the water business.
Yeah, and I, like several years ago, almost a decade ago, I kept checking out water purification, and I just never came up with any answers, I guess because I hadn't found you then. But what I did settle on was reverse osmosis. And so, it just took me years of trying to demystify and understand what was actually happening. So before we go on further, I just want to say that if people click the link below the interview, what they'll get is a PDF copy of basically a lot of the things you're going to talk about, and maybe some of them you won't get to, but it's basically your outline of your presentation. So
yes.
If you want to follow along, Robert will mention things from there. So,
and I may use as I speak, I may refer to some slide numbers that will make it easier for those who are following with the written presentation to just go, oh, here's slide 1F or something.
Yeah, great. So tell us about water. Like, what do we really need to know that we might be totally not understanding or misled, or we just don't know about the best water to use in our house for drinking and for bathing? So just start with what we need to do.
Well, I think I'm going to tell the little story that last night, my time about 9:30, I get a call from a doctor in Chicago who has one of my systems, and this is one of the problems with water. And they go, Robert, we don't have as much pressure to take a shower as we used to. Okay? And I said, Katharina, do you know what time it is? And she goes, Robert, you've always been so helpful and available. I thought there'd be no trouble. And I go, no, there's no trouble. But I think your filter's doing its job and it's getting clogged up. So that's one of the neat problems about water purification, is that people forget almost everything about the technology when they finally get some. And they think one of the biggest problems in the industry, they never change their filters. So I'm just starting out with almost the end conclusion. You have to change your filters. And last night reminded me of that. But I think I'd like to just cover and introduce a couple, even if it's token, a couple of points of terminology that you hear all the time, but people just don't know what it means. And one of them is POU. It's an acronym for point of use. And it's commonly used in the water industry, but not allowed outside it. But so when you go and do research and you start seeing POU and you go, what is that? Mm-hmm. So it stands for point of use, and it means really the use of water treatment technology at a single location, such as your kitchen sink, to make drinking water to the quality that you are attempting to get. So that's point of use. Then there's point of entry. Now, point of entry is something that would treat all the water coming into your home. And it would be very different equipment, but often people are sold point of entry. And point of entry is primarily designed to serve your experience and your safety and your health while bathing and showering. Of course, it treats water for your laundry. Of course, it treats water for cleaning and so on. But primarily, when you look into designing or obtaining a point of entry system, you're thinking about your safety and your family's safety while bathing and showering. So point of entry treats all the water in the house. Now, usually point of entry systems do not have the sophistication that the point of use system has, because the point of use system, you're going to consume it. That water is going to deliver everything that's in it to every cell in your body. So you want it to be the best that technology can provide. Point of entry, you're just trying to protect yourself while bathing and showering from the exposure to the skin and inhalation somewhat. Mm-hmm. So that's much less an assault on the body than would be if you drank water with contaminants in it.
But that might be like the chlorine that gets off gas when you take a shower, for example. So some people can be really sensitive to that.
Some people are sensitive, and I just want to say that chlorine is really at the low end of toxicity when it comes to the things we can find in water. Okay?
Are you going to get into that later, or can I ask that question? Are you going to get into that later, or can I ask that question now?
Let's ask the question now. Let's get things out.
Yeah, so that's the question. What do people, why do people need to filter? What do they need to protect themselves from?
Well, we are going to cover that, but let's just take chlorine. So people object to chlorine because if it's high enough, it doesn't smell good. Mm-hmm. And then it can be mildly irritating to the skin. And remember what chlorine is. Chlorine is just like adding chlorine bleach or Clorox to the water a little bit, mm-hmm. to a couple milligrams in every liter. So it's not a lot. And from a pure health standpoint in your lifetime, chlorine is a low level toxin. It's not that bad. But because it smells bad, you want to get it out. Now there's something that may not smell as bad, that's much worse, called chloramines, where they chlorinate the water and then they add ammonia in for a certain reason I'll explain later. But why chlorine got a reputation that it did is that it reacts beyond just disinfecting bacteria, which, is an incredible accomplishment of chlorine. And when people ask me, hey, what are the 3 top medicines in history that have helped mankind? I always include chlorine. Chlorine has saved more lives than probably any single chemical we know. Even though we find it objectionable, but my God, there'd be millions upon millions of people who would have died had it not been for the disinfecting capability of chlorine. Right. So, but when chlorine reacts with other natural matter in the water, such as little molecules of leaves and plants and dirt and so on, it forms compounds they never realized were being formed until fairly recently, the last 20 years. And these are called disinfection byproducts, DBPs. And these disinfection byproducts are almost always carcinogenic. So just by adding kind of innocent, low toxicity chlorine to regular water supplies that comes from nature, you are start forming things that can induce miscarriage, for instance. So we have to worry really much more about getting rid of what chlorine creates than the chlorine itself. Okay. And that's something that, because it happens in the shower and bathing, your exposure to these chemicals, this is something you must employ point of entry treatment, because if you just have a point of use system at your kitchen sink, you're not going to get it at the shower.
Right. And so then these chlorine byproducts, are these the ones that are like you can get them, will they go in your skin or you inhale them and that's how they affect you in a toxic way?
Mostly by inhalation.
Okay.
The skin is a remarkable barrier and really slows down the entry of any chemical penetration. And it's usually not a big factor compared to inhalation, which when you inhale, it's going right to your bloodstream, basically.
Yeah. Okay. Great. And are you ready to tell us yet about what the best point of use or point of entry? I mean, obviously, point of use is.
We're going to cover a couple more things. I want people to know we've learned point of use, we've learned point of entry, and I want people to know what total dissolved solids are, because there's so much a part of our world and people don't know. So total dissolved solids are the sum of all the minerals that you can get in water, okay? And it varies radically throughout all the water supplies on the planet. Mm-hmm. So how would you see what they look like? Let's say you took a saucepan full of water, you turn on the heat, you forget about it, and you come back and there's no water left, but there's kind of a grayish, whitish, brownish deposit. That is the total dissolved solids. And those minerals were put or got into the water because the rainwater fell upon the earth and it dissolved those minerals over time, and they got in the groundwater or in the river water, etc. So let's look at who gets exposed to that. If you're really living at high altitude, like so many healthy cultures are, the Hunzes, maybe Vilcabamba Ecuadorians, etc. The blue zones, for those who follow that healthiest places on earth.
The Tibetans?
Huh?
The Tibetans?
The Tibetans?
The people in the high Himalaya?
Don't have a lot of minerals in their water.
Oh, okay.
As we often
They're high up, though.
They're high up. So what's high up? Well, when you're really high up, there's probably snow and rain, and it melts, and you drink it. So it doesn't have a lot of time in the ground.
Okay.
Therefore, it doesn't dissolve a lot of minerals. So here's a very healthy people, and I'm leading up to something that drinks water with very few minerals in it. And that's just a good thing to know. And then there's people, typically the high amount of minerals is from water that spends a lot of time in the ground or travels a long distance in the river, like the Mississippi River. By the time it gets to the end, there's lots of minerals in it. How about the Colorado River, which starts up in the Rockies as snow, but travels hundreds and hundreds of miles down to Southern California, where we have one of the highest mineral contents there are. But minerals are a good side and a bad side.
Just going to ask that. What's the upside? What's the downside? I mean, anything we need to know.
The upside of minerals are, first of all, minerals, there are minerals that get put into water that are not good, like arsenic. Okay? Cadmium could be in it. Those are some minerals that aren't very good. So, or maybe you need a little bit of arsenic, but you don't want a lot of arsenic. So these minerals then that are found in water are rarely enough to be of dietary significance. Okay? However, if you are on a marginal diet, the studies show that if you have water that's particularly high in calcium and magnesium minerals, often referred to as hardness, these seem to be associated with a lower incidence of cardiovascular disease. So there's a benefit.
Yeah.
But let's say that you ate a healthy diet, leafy green vegetables, kale with magnesium in it, you wouldn't need the minerals in water because it's really not a concentrated source.
So does that mean if someone doesn't have great water and they don't have a purification system right now, and they were getting mineral water or spring water, I should say spring water, because I don't know what minerals are in it, that wouldn't really be that much of a dietary help. It would be more of a help from what it's pure going into your body.
Yes, and it would be far from what would be needed with the primary minerals, calcium, magnesium, phosphorus, potassium, iron, etc., far from what you would need from a dietary perspective. It's better than nothing.
Yeah.
It's nice to have, but really in the end, we are really starving for the trace elements and not so much the primary elements. That's the rare one to get. And it's it's a shoot to see what you have. Not many natural waters have trace elements.
Okay, so I have a question about that for people who might not know. We have a lot of practitioners watching, but we have a lot of parents. So people who may not know that, when you're referring to the basic minerals, maybe you can tell us what they are. And when you're referring to the trace minerals, maybe you can say which ones you're thinking of when you refer to
Okay,
those.
well, I'm not even sure I could name all the trace elements.
Just a few, like that people
over
might.
70 of them, okay? And, but there's, of the primary elements we get from our diet, typically primary elements are those that you need over 100 milligrams per day. And the trace elements are elements that are sufficient in less than 1 milligram per day.
Okay, so the basic ones might be calcium, magnesium, phosphorus,
potassium, sulfur, iron, manganese. Those would be significant.
Okay, and the trace ones?
Elements. But the rest of them are simply elements of the periodic table.
Okay.
And for those of you who download the presentation, one of the last slides shows some really neat illustrations of the periodic table. And those periodic table, the periodic table of 92 natural elements really are what we're all composed of throughout creation, throughout evolution. And the connection is that where did life begin? It really began in the ocean. And to think that the ocean is a solution, an aqueous solution of the entire periodic table. So it contains every primary and every trace element known.
Okay, so
we'll talk about that later.
Well, just let's touch on, I want you to tell the story that you told me the other day about how life was there for 3 billion years, that one. So,
well, okay, so one could say, without sounding like too religious and so on, the earth was formed from all the dust and matter and comets and asteroids that collected around the sun. and it was, gravity brought it together. It was hot and molten. The heavy elements like iron stuck to the center, and a crust formed on it. And then this was about 5 billion years ago, a long time. Mm-hmm. And then about a half a billion years later, the Earth was bombarded with primarily comets of water. And I don't know if you realize, or if you've heard, that one of the recent space probes determined that comets were composed mostly of ice. And it was a kind of a big confirmation of something that didn't make a lot of sense, but it's true. So for hundreds of millions of years, the Earth was bombarded in something that's called the Late Great Bombardment, okay? Good title for a movie. And last year, by the way, that was covered by National Geographic magazine. And that late great bombardment of all these comets completely covered the Earth with water. And then the water dissolved the crust of the Earth to its natural chemical solubilities and formed what we know as the ocean. Now, some people, and so it kind of stewed there for a while, not that long, but this magical solution that some people call the primordial ocean, the giver of life, life started in this special solution of everything. It was the ultimate throw a soup that had everything in it, because there's nothing more in the universe than the periodic table of the elements. It makes up the entire universe. So here was the solution. Life began in it, and the most amazing thing to me is that life evolved in that ocean without leaving it for nearly 3 billion years. You know, we can't even conceive of 3 billion years. We've been here for whatever, less than 1 million years. So 3 billion years is a long time, because life felt very comfortable in that solution. And there's a lot of ways to explain it that are beyond the scope of this talk, but it's one of my most fascinating topics. Great. So you have this life, and life needed and found a way to use all of those elements of the periodic table. So it included the primary minerals, it included the trace elements, and without getting even more complex, those trace elements began to disappear from the world of life that left the ocean about 750 million years ago. Life evolved out of the ocean for a terrestrial existence, and then it started to get shortchanged on its trace elements. A lot of it was erosion, and you know now that with modern agriculture, we don't produce food. Even organic food really is nearly absent in these 70 plus trace elements.
Right. And I just wanted to reiterate, like, the part that fascinated me was that we like evolution, I guess, creatures, life spent 3 billion years in the ocean. And you said about 750 million years out of the ocean. And so we're going to talk about later how that ocean is in us, and we're, you know, like how we're so similar to that in our blood, and how that can help us.
We better talk to the people who want to learn about water purification.
Yeah, so let's do the water purification. If you could just jump to what's the best system that you know of at this point. Yeah.
It's probably a little too complicated to just say, here's the best system, go buy it, okay? Because a lot has to do with what's in your water. And that's really what people forget. So,
and that's probably going to vary depending on where you are.
Oh, it varies like people vary. Okay?
Right, okay.
Water is as diverse as humans. But for those of you who want some really basics to read and so on, go to that website that I mentioned on the download, which is www.wqa.org. That's Water Quality Association. It's a water industry site. And search for publications, and you can download Water Treatment for Dummies, something that I helped contribute to.
All right, and then they can get a more of a background if they want to.
Yeah, it'll cover some really neat things you should know. The difference in water supplies is so significant that anybody thinking, hey, we need to fix our water, you absolutely have to go to the website of your water supplier and download the annual report. Everyone has to do it. It's a law. Every year, at least once a year, many cities do it more, have to produce an analysis. And not everybody's going to understand everything about that analysis, but I promise you it will be an eye-opener for you that they have to analyze for all these contaminants and what's in the water. You can tell from that report, for instance, if you're getting just chlorine disinfection or chloramine disinfection or chlorine dioxide disinfection, all things that are important to choosing a water system.
Okay. So what your city water report has in it can affect how you choose your point of use filter. Is that what you're saying?
Absolutely. And your point of entry filter.
Okay.
And understand we don't have the time and the scope in this interview to cover people who have well water. I mean, that's even more complex because you have about 15 or 16 million people in the United States on wells, and well water can be as diverse as insects, okay?
And we have people listening from all around the world, so who knows?
Wow. Yes.
Yeah.
So the water is so variable, and when we talk about well water, because some people who listen to my presentations are frustrated because we can't get to it, the well water starts to present things like iron in the water that turns your clothes red, okay? And your sink red. Manganese that turns it black and brown. Hydrogen sulfide that smells like rotten eggs. I mean, you have a whole nother set of things that are troubling. So unfortunately, we can't cover that one today.
I grew up with that kind of water. Yeah.
Did you?
Yeah.
Oh, good. It makes you tougher.
All right.
In the quest for finding point of use and point of entry, I sympathize with the entire audience because there's not a lot of help for you. It's an industry that surely has a long way to go to service the public. And there's not a lot of people who know about water in the water selling industry. And then these days, you can buy almost any kind of water equipment on the internet. And that can be even a more frightening experience because you have fantastic presentations that just may not be that truthful. It's very easy to fool people about water. I see it every day. And especially when I go to shows and people go, here's what we just bought. And we will go on the internet and I look at it and I get so frustrated and angry that they have been sold something totally inappropriate.
Yeah, it sounds like it's really highly unregulated and it's really difficult to decide what is really truthful and what is really doing the job it's supposed to be doing.
So one of the things I can say is that the best hope you have to start are these two things. One, if you're going to buy it from like a store or a dealer, that dealer should be a member of the Water Quality Association. That's good for starters, far from perfect. And so it's like a professional organization. And the people who work for that dealership should have people who are trained to various standards. And many of them will present this on the walls of their office and so on, that they have people who are trained to technical standards that are taught at the Water Quality Association. So that's a good starter. For people who are just looking on the internet, you definitely want to know who NSF is. And its name, they don't use the words in the acronym, which is National Sanitation Foundation. It's a standards authority, independent, nonprofit, though they charge a lot of money, that tests equipment. And they're pretty good. I was one of the people who helped write the standards for this organization.
Mhm.
And so people would make equipment, submit it to them, and they would follow these standards to evaluate it. So you want to know, if you go on nsf.org,
Mhm.
and you can see a world of things like, I have chloramines in my water. What can I use? And it will list all the companies and products and how good they are. It takes a
That's
little
excellent.
time, but that's a great resource.
Okay, great.
So what about, since we already know there's a vast difference in the water supply, this is the first hurdle to get around, finding what's in your water. If you were living, let's say, in a small town in Montana, okay, you might not even need point of use. You might satisfy every need to remove any contaminant with a point of entry carbon filter.
Okay, so carbon.
It
Mhm.
can be that simple.
Okay.
Okay, now that would almost never work for somebody in Los Angeles. It would not be appropriate. It certainly wouldn't work for somebody in New Orleans. It wouldn't work for somebody in New York or any city, or certainly in San Diego, where they recycle their sewage water and turn it back into drinking water.
So what I'm hearing is you need tough guns in the big cities, and
You need tough guns in the big city, even though they do a good job, but they push it to the limit.
okay.
And water can get contaminated. Even if it came out of the water treatment plant like perfect, it really can pick up contamination from the pipes and so on. So
Like we had in Detroit, right, with the lead pipes, right?
there you go. That's like the ultimate example of the failure of infrastructure to keep people healthy.
Well, I just want to say a little anecdote about that. Is I thought, then my son's school, I live in Eugene, Oregon, and my son's school, high school, tested all their pipes, all their water, the place of drinking fountains and sinks, and, which was great. It was very proactive. And what they found was that I think there was one utility sink that had a little higher amount of lead. They were all pretty clean except this one place. It might maybe have been two. And I said, phew, that's good. And then I was telling somebody, and she said, yeah, but did the janitor, did the cleaning people put their mops in there and then spread it all over the floor? Then there's these little things that I don't know that we think of. And then is that inhaled? And I mean, I don't know, Is that an issue?
Short-term inhalation of cleaning chemicals is not good, and you should minimize it. But we really, it somehow makes us overlook the world we are dealing with. Like someone who was telling me they would never drink water out of a plastic bottle, and I appreciate that. But I asked them, you know what, to be really fair to yourself, if you really are that fastidious about it, then you better remove all the plastic in your house, the carpets completely, any window coverings gone. Everything is synthetic, everything is outgassing to us. And the water bottle, the proverbial water bottle with plastic chemicals in it, it is almost sinks to undetectable in these things.
So what I'm hearing you say, and this is for everyone also who might be afraid of their water bottles, and I mean, it's legitimate. You don't want to drink plastics, but if your whole house is off gassing and you've got plastics everywhere surrounding you and you're closed in, then that's the least of your worries.
Correct. And if, let's say, because we know that, things dissolve more in warm water than they do cold water, if your bottle is sitting in a hot car in Santa Monica for 3 days, you don't want to drink that water at all, okay? Yeah. Because it's got an extra dose of plastic chemicals in it. So can we cover some of the worst contaminants that people might
Yeah, and then what I'd like you to do is we kind of led people up to the if you live in a big city and you've got a bunch of contaminants, what are you going to use? So let's do the contaminants,
Okay.
and then the worst contaminants, and then let's do like the most powerful system they can use. That'll
Okay.
help.
So here's the
that.
contaminants that scare me and scare anybody else that knows the science of water. First of all, there's chlorine, and itself is not bad, but we know what chlorine turns into.
Mm-hmm.
It makes disinfection byproducts and carcinogenic chemicals, chloramines and chlorine dioxide. The disinfection byproducts themselves, the main one is called trihalomethane, okay? THM for short. Fluoride, of course, probably one of the most insidious one. We don't understand why it's there, etc. Heavy metals, aluminum. Aluminum is used in the treatment of water supplies. And then there's categories, SOCs, synthetic organic chemicals that can include things like pesticides and the chemicals in our world. VOCs, volatile organic chemicals. Let's say a gas station's leaking and the benzene from the gasoline leaks into the aquifer water supply. You've got VOCs in the water. Then, go ahead.
Yeah, my question was like the VOCs and the pesticide type stuff. To our water purification systems in our cities, do they get those contaminants out?
It varies greatly.
Okay.
I would say there's standards for some of them, and there are, and they don't always meet the standard. And one of the biggest things to realize is that the ability of a city or a government to remove contaminants from water is determined more by economics than any other single factor.
Like how much the city has to put into their water purification?
I mean, this is a problem. For instance, there's at least 50 chemicals that are waiting on someone's desk in Congress that scientists have said, would you please designate those that they shouldn't be in a city water? And they will say, it's going to triple the cost of water in the average person's home. It ain't going to get done for 10 more years, if it ever gets done. So that's a reality. Then we have some of the latest stuff, EDCs, endocrine disrupting chemicals. And that might include all the things from pharmaceuticals, antibiotics, Viagra, you name it, estrogen. It's all ending up in the water supply. Not all of it, but much of it does.
And I think I just want to say about that, it's not just that people flush old medicine down the toilet. It's that we actually pee it out, right? It comes out in our urine. You
got it.
Yeah, okay.
It's the biggest reason, your latter reason. And then there's something called PPCPs, which are personal care products, hand lotions, mascara, cosmetics, all that stuff is going into the water supply. And those cities that recycle their sewage, which is an amazing set of technologies that I have worked on for decades. There are mistakes that get made. That's all I can say. Okay, so how do we get this stuff out? Let's take point of use. You're trying to make drinking water for your family. So you can get bottled water, and bottled water is a pretty good deal, albeit an expensive one. Okay? Most bottled water that is popular and distributed like nationwide, whether it's made by Nestle or Pepsi, not my favorite companies for the distribution of water, but 98% of bottled water, frankly, in the world is made by reverse osmosis, activated carbon, and ozonation. So you can't go wrong really with the purity.
So with those, the reverse osmosis, it gets a lot of the junk out because it's very pure. It's almost like distillation.
It's
close.
I mean, really,
and then the carbon gets the big stuff, and then
no, the other way.
No, okay.
In a way, one gets a whole category of chemicals out whose molecules do not vaporize.
Okay.
and the carbon gets out ones like the VOCs and some pesticides that if you left them in a dish, they wouldn't be there the next day.
So they would evaporate out.
Exactly. So
Okay.
kind of think of it that way. It's not a perfect explanation, but it's close.
Mm-hmm.
So between, and then the ozonation disinfects and actually further destroys some other chemicals. So those three things, I mean, you can't go wrong with it, notwithstanding the fact they put it in the plastic bottle. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
So, but they really do clean the water, and there's a lot of natural bottled waters, okay, that are from artesian wells, glacial springs, and so on, that are very pure and very good and very expensive typically. Another way is to have a water purification system. So if you're in a troubling area and you don't want to spend a lot of time investigating, the two technologies that stand alone to remove the greatest variety and the greatest amount of a given contaminant is distillation, followed by activated carbon, and reverse osmosis, followed by activated carbon. Mm-hmm. Those two are in a category of their own.
Right.
And each one is kind of a double whammy, right? It's got two kinds of purification that removes virtually every category. So now those have their own issues. Distillation is not user friendly all the time, and maybe you have to clean it, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. But it is an excellent combination of technologies. And reverse osmosis these days has become kind of the convenience thing, the convenience method that everybody knows is really high tech and used to desalinate water and used in spaceships and all that. So it's cool. But for those of you, and this is probably one of the biggest things that I harp on in shows, is those of you who have family members who are health compromised or children who have autism, you have to be very careful there. And do you think I should cover that right now since we're on it?
Sure. What's the downside of the reverse osmosis?
The downside is this. Reverse osmosis, the technology, makes water slowly, so it has to be stored up. Like distillation. The two great things it makes it a drop at a time and you store it. Now, the RO systems that are designed that, my brother and I are best known for way back in the 1970s, use storage tanks that are enclosed. And those storage tanks breed bacteria. And they breed a bacteria generally that's called heterotrophic, not pathogenic. Pathogens would make you sick daily. Mm-hmm. Heterotrophs or heterotrophic bacteria are bacteria you're pretty used to getting in your environment, okay? Mm-hmm. And if you're a healthy person, from a young person of 5 or 6 to 70, you have a great tool called your stomach acid to kill bacteria. All right? It's an amazing thing. If you didn't have stomach acid, you'd be sick 6 times a day at least. So, and I want to make this important, but infants, children with gut problems, children who are health compromised, and the elderly do not properly make stomach acid or are very sensitive to extra bacteria because your body alerts your immune system. What's all this bacteria doing here? And it can lead to complications. So I will tell you that an RO storage tank has a high level of bacteria in it. There are ways around it. So I tell people, if I'm meeting someone in a show, especially an autism show, I say, ma'am, she goes, what do I do? We just bought this system. Mm-hmm. I said, listen, drain this tank completely 4 times per week. At the end of the day, when you've used all the water, drain it 4 times a day.
And when you say drain it, you mean like take it out from under the sink and
No,
dump it upside down?
no.
No, you mean
Open
make
the
sure all the water in the tank goes out.
Open that faucet and let it drain until no more water comes out. It'll only be about 2 gallons. You
Okay.
can use that water on your plants. You can use it to rinse your hair.
Mhm.
RO water is great to rinse your hair, by the way.
Okay.
And so whatever you or just run it down the drain. But your child is far more important than losing a few gallons of water, and so that will help always dilute the bacteria in it. But people whose children are very, very sensitive, have serious gut problems, I tell them you must go one step further. For the water they drink, not the water you boil their spaghetti in, but the water they're going to drink or you're going to make some other drink with, whatever, proverbial healthy Kool-Aid one.
The smoothie or whatever.
Smoothie. I tell them you must sterilize this water.
Okay.
And I always show this little sterilizer you can buy on Amazon.com. It's called a SteriPen.
SteriPen. Okay.
Many people have seen this. And when you put this SteriPen in water and push the button.
Can you move the glass up so we can see? Yeah. Okay.
You can see the light turns on.
Mm-hmm.
And in 30 seconds, it will turn off. And no matter what's in that water, it will be safe. It will be killed. It will be dead.
Is it like a certain vibration or a light emission that kills?
No, it's light, ultraviolet.
Oh, it's light. Okay.
Ultraviolet, it's a very proven technology used all around the world, as you know, and it kills bacteria, virus, and cysts. So all 3 categories of microbes.
So if there's Giardia or
not filters, it just kills it.
Right, it kills it. So if there is Giardia in the water, it'll kill it.
People take it camping. This is what I take when I travel to hostile countries. Okay?
Great.
So
That's
anyway,
awesome.
That is something I just really was happy I communicated during this interview.
Great. That's awesome. And then maybe I'm premature, tell me, but I think you have a new point of use thing that you can put on the end of your faucet. Do you want to tell us about that? I don't know about it.
You can see a picture of this if you download the little presentation.
Mm-hmm.
Ultraviolet is a great technology, but it's not practical to put on an RO system and so on, and it's a complicated thing to explain. So I recently have become associated with something that's referred to as quantum disinfection. This is a completely chemical-free disinfection method of all categories of microbes that truly amazed me, and I didn't even believe it when it was first presented to me. But what this technology does, it's just, I don't have any here, it just looks like little tiny miniature M&Ms, so to speak.
It's in the slide. I'm on the slide right now, and it's like page 21 if you guys are looking at the slides.
There you go. And it's a media. It's just little beads. And if you put water through it that has microbes in it, it's going to come out with no microbes in it. And what it does is it's a solid state physics phenomenon, and it sucks electrons out of all living microorganisms and kills them instantly. So this is right now, this very year, I've been waiting 40 years for this. I now can design people's water systems that have this media in it, and it's very economical, and it can be all bacteria free. So look for this, everybody. Okay,
where can they get it? That's the big question.
Huh?
Where can they get it? Where do they order it? Or
you can't get it yet, and for the simple reason that they can't make enough of it right now. So by the end of the year, you guys are going to see in this paradigm of autism and so on, you're going to see that these filters are going to be available. One that I'm designing, you'll just put on the end of your faucet and it'll be microbe-free.
Okay, so it's called quantum disinfection.
Well, that's the technology.
Is it by Purative?
Huh?
It's by Purative water?
Yes, it will be sold by Purative.
Okay, Purative, Purative. And it's purative.com, right?
Purative.com.
Right. So go
And that's where
there.
it will be announced.
Okay. And how about, Robert, when you guys are ready to announce it, I'll send an email out to everyone and we
I
can
would
make
love it.
sure they know. Yeah. So we
Oh,
just
how
want to
about
make
if
sure
we
people
talk
can.
about shower filters? Because so many people ask me about shower filters.
Yes, let's do shower filters. Then I really want to touch on the ketone.
Okay, so shower filters don't work. Okay, for all of you out there that are more fastidious and health minded than the average American, perhaps shower filters may and do remove chlorine, taste and odor, smell from the water, and that's really what its limitation is. There's a lot of lying that goes on in the water business. And so you really can't rely on people's claims too much, but they just don't have enough of the right media to remove these chemicals we talked about, like trihalomethanes and disinfection byproducts. So,
right, because it's usually this little thing that's just on your
well,
shower.
yeah, even if it's a big thing, there are big,
Okay.
they don't do it either. So,
Okay.
if the water smells better to you, I mean, use it. There's nothing wrong with it. Just it's not enough. And so what do you do if you want to take shower in pure water? You have to go with a point of entry system. And that point of entry system typically is based around carbon.
Okay, which is what you said gets a ton of the chemicals out.
Yes. But it has to be the right kind of carbon, et cetera, et cetera. And it's a little more complicated than we're going to be able to cover. But I will say this quickly, and people who can record this, if you have chloramines in the water, which is one of the types of disinfection, that's chlorine plus ammonia, this requires a special carbon called catalytic activated carbon. You must order that, okay? So I just had a friend call me and says, listen, should I have the company come and change my carbon? And I said, what city do you live in? He says, I live in Camarillo. And I said, whoa, well, let me check. Camarillo has chloramines in it. I said, your filter was never able to remove that because you only have regular activated carbon. So I said, call them back and ask them if they have catalytic activated carbon, and then you'll remove it. So I'm also very into a new kind of point of entry. I'd say 95% of the people buy a filter for their house that backwashes, that every 5 days or whatever, it takes water and runs it back through it, and it relieves the media of any dirt and particles it's collected. It's a beautiful idea that's been around for over 70 years, and it's fantastic. But what isn't fantastic about it, and it's unfortunate, that it doesn't help the removal of these exotic chemicals we're talking about, the SOCs, the VOCs, the endocrine disruptors. What happens is when you disrupt the bed by backwashing, you allow the media to release some of these chemicals back into the water. So I am telling people something new that's come out, just like this new quantum disinfection media after 40 years. Almost at the same time, actually a couple years ago, a carbon block, which is one of the greatest designs for removing chemicals. It's a block that's compressed of carbon. I think you've heard of it, haven't you?
Yeah, so it looks like a brick.
Looks like a brick.
Inside the device, it looks like a brick. Right.
This kind of thing has now been made so big, like this big, that it does the whole house. And this is what I am promoting to the industry. Please use this for people who have who are health conscious and or are health compromised. It's much more effective.
And so if someone two questions, if someone has already a point of entry system, what do they do? Like you said, they can ask for that activated, some kind of activated carbon. But then if they don't have a point of entry, where can they get that one that you're talking about?
Let's just say you'll announce that at the same time. You know.
So you've got Curative will have one?
Yes. One of the problems of coming up with water treatment innovation that typically requires installation is the establishment of a dealer network. And so this takes a lot of time, sometimes a couple of years, because these things have to be installed. It's like coming out with a new car design. You better have dealers in Nebraska who can fix the brakes in that car. Do you know what I mean? Right. So water treatment's the same, so it's not so easy. And, you know, people need help installing something in plumbing, etc. So that's why we're taking a little time to set up dealer networks.
Okay, so that will be announced later in the year, this new, bigger carbon block system.
Yes.
But if someone already has a system, a point of entry system, any recommendation?
Okay, here's the one, this would be a good recommendation. Let's say you're like, well, we don't want to buy a new system. We just bought that 2 years ago, okay? And it cost us $4,000, which, by the way, is far too much, okay? Always bargain people down and tell them it's too much when it's water purification. So if you find out from your water report, do you have chlorine, chloramines, or chlorine dioxide disinfection? If you have chlorine and the system is carbon, you're fine. But if you have chloramines, you better require that supplier to give you catalytic activated carbon. Okay. So that's the first thing I would do. And then I would have him make sure that if the device is going to backwash, okay, that it backwash no more frequently than once per week.
Okay,
that's
and
the
then
best you can do with what you already have.
Okay, and then that third method, besides the chlorine and the chloramine, was the chlorine dioxide. Do you need anything special for that, or could you just use the regular carbon?
Yes, regular carbon.
Okay, so I want to shift a little bit just to get your opinion for what you know on water purification. Now, a lot of people have the, I don't want to name names, but there's alkalinized water and these systems where you can alkalinize it.
Let me cut the case on this. I'll make it real easy on you.
Yeah.
The pH of water is totally meaningless. It doesn't matter whether you drink water that's acidic pH, neutral pH, or alkaline pH, for the very simple reason that as soon as you drink it, it's going to go into your stomach, which is at a pH of 1 to 3 with hydrochloric acid. It's going to acidify everything, okay? So forget pH, it's a fad. It's I call it a scientific misconception that became $1 billion business. So don't buy into alkaline water, don't use it, don't buy it in Whole Foods, don't buy it at the water store you may be going to. Forget alkaline water. It doesn't do what they tell you it does.
Great. But you have the hydrogenated water, which is not at all alkaline water, correct?
Not at all.
Do you say something about the hydrogenated water?
Yeah. Okay,
like very short. We're running out of time, and I really want you to get to the ketone.
Okay, so let's say we have a distiller and carbon, or a reverse osmosis plus carbon. One of the things people say is, wow, you've taken all the minerals out. It's dead water, whatever. First, there's no such thing as dead water. Water without minerals isn't going to demineralize you. There are some myths that go on. And let's see, what's a third thing they say about RO? And I don't know. It's lacking energy or something. All of these are myths. But if you make distilled water or RO water, you really do want to mineralize it. Not so much that it's harmful, but you want to take advantage of its ability to deliver minerals. Okay. Now, one of the things that we favor, and there's many good kind of minerals, we favor a product that has the whole periodic table from the ocean. Okay?
Because they were coming back to the whole ocean thing that we talked about.
Coming back to the whole ocean thing. Now, what's another version of this? I would also, somebody says, well, you know, I don't know what this is. I don't want to spend the time. I don't want to spend the money. Then buy Celtic, C-E-L-T-I-C, sea salt from any health food store. It's been around for 70 years. It's a good second best kind of product. So
Right, because if you're talking sea salt, it's coming from the ocean. It's going to have as many trace minerals as
exactly, not
all the
as
minerals.
many, because when you process sea salt
Okay, some of
and
them
you
go
dry
away.
it and all of that,
Hmm.
things go away, and it's too complicated to explain. But this is raw. This is untouched. It's from a plankton bloom, and it is the best source uh, of trace elements in the world. Then there's something to take advantage of, another water additive, hydrogen. One of the things that's a recent discovery from Japan, like in the late 1980s, was molecular hydrogen, simple H2. Now, for 500 years, science ignored H2 as having any role because it's a relatively inert molecule. And they go, well, inert molecules don't react. But they missed something. And a couple of Japanese researchers said, look at this. H2 is one of the best antioxidants known for destroying the most harmful free radical called the hydroxyl radical. It also does the peroxynitrite radical, but I don't want to confuse you. The hydroxyl radical, OH, is the bad one in the body.
And OH has a negative charge, and
no
it's
charge. No charge.
OH has no charge.
Yeah.
Okay.
I'm so glad you said that. So
Great.
OH is the hydroxide ion.
Okay.
OH minus. This is OH neutral. There's no charge.
Okay.
It just has unpaired electrons. That's what makes it dangerous. And hydrogen goes after it. And one of the most beautiful things about hydrogen is that when it neutralizes free radicals, it turns them to water.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, bingo. It's like the best of all worlds.
So I want to put this a little bit into lay terms, and what we're talking, that's hydrogen.
Tablet?
Yeah.
This is one way to do it. This little tablet that I helped create in 2010. If you drop this in water, you can see.
Is it going to fizz? Yeah, I see the little bubbles going. So
this is going to infuse the water with molecular hydrogen, and you drink it.
So I just wanted to say that when we talk about free radicals, those are usually the chemicals in the body that are negative and do a lot of damage. And then the hydrogen because it can really grab onto that place where you say it has the electrons. It's almost like magnets, right?
It's almost
the
like
hydrogen is like a magnet to it, and it just turns it into water and then hydrates your body. How simple is that?
And there's so many things written on molecular hydrogen now. You almost it's now. I just did an interview recently for Elle magazine, and I mean all the Time magazine, all the newspapers. Everybody's kind of getting excited about hydrogen, but it really is good stuff, and it's very therapeutic. It's not a lifestyle thing. It's hey, this fixes oxidative stress in the body.
Okay, so when would someone want to use that? Like in the case of, I have an autistic child. How do I fit that in? Okay, what do I want to use that for?
I have a bunch of articles here that recognize that children with autism are plagued with something we call oxidative stress.
Yeah.
Okay? And oxidative stress is a proliferation resulting from free radicals. And it also involves the depletion of things called redox signaling molecules, blah, blah, blah. So one of the
chemicals in the body we need.
we need those.
Yeah.
But people didn't know that till recently. But one of the problems with regular antioxidants is that they deplete redox signaling molecules too, in addition to depleting some of the bad free radicals. But that's yet another plus for hydrogen, because hydrogen doesn't deplete redox signaling molecules. It's like the perfect thing for oxidative stress. And there's no contraindication. You can take it 10 glasses a day, 1 glass a day, and it's very effective. It's mild, beautiful, a beautiful technology, a therapeutic technology.
Okay, so someone with, let's say, a lot of brain inflammation or gut inflammation, they've got that high oxidative stress. How many times a day might they want to just take a glass of hydrogenated water?
Somebody was recently, had some kind of trauma recently that generated an undue amount of oxidative stress. I would do like 3 tablets a day in water or in a bottle. I just followed the instructions. So you can see this is becoming very rich with millions of microscopic bubbles.
Mm-hmm.
So when this tablet is done reacting, you simply drink it.
Mm-hmm.
I wanted to keep this longer, like, hey, I'm going to go for a bike ride. I would put this in a bottle filled with water, make the hydrogen, put it in the refrigerator, and when I left, I'd take it with me, and 2 hours later, it would drink it.
Okay, that's great. And people can get that also at purative.com?
They can, and this is kind of how it comes, and it comes in like a bottle of 60 tablets called Active H2.
Okay, will you hold it up so we can, yeah, there you go. Great.
Yeah.
Perfect.
And this is an incredibly popular product, actually worldwide, and we make 5 private labels of this that aren't obviously called Active H2. So many people are taking this worldwide, and it's very, what can I say, gratifying to be able to do that.
That's great. Robert, we've run past the hour, but I so want you to talk about, you held up the quintessential, the ocean plasma, and I just want you to say maybe 5 minutes about why is this so great and why should people take it and what case they should take it. Like, what's so far? I know Dr. Chris Shade is in the summit and he talks about that a little bit, but you give us your perspective.
Okay. So, I mean, part of it can be answered by evolution, that when life left the ocean, Rene Canton, who discovered Canton marine plasma, he said that when life left the ocean, the only way life could leave the ocean was to take the ocean with it. And in that period of time, your blood of the early mammals and life was literally the same composition as the ocean. It had all the 92 elements in it, but we don't have that anymore. Mm-hmm. And the sum of the fluids in the body we often refer to as the terrain. Mm-hmm. Have you heard that term before?
Yeah.
The biological terrain,
yes.
terrain. And that terrain becomes imbalanced and it becomes corrupt because it's no longer identified with ocean chemistry. And what ketone enables you to do is to restore that ocean inheritance back into your body fluids. I mean, that's the 15-cent story of it.
What does it do for you, though, to restore the ocean in your body? Well,
it's so foundational that it serves every process. It's not like, your finger will stop hurting. Nothing is more foundational than the elements of the periodic table to the function of the body's physiology. So you can pick anything. Your blood, it's like, what does water do for you? I mean, can you think of a process in the body that water isn't involved in?
Right, so it goes in all the tissues and it hydrates you and it serves you.
This is like just right next to water. Water and the elements of the periodic table. Those are the two most foundational things in the body.
And the elements, what we tend to be the most deficient in, because you said they're not in our food anymore, right? Because they're not in the ground.
Not in food anymore.
And we find a lot of kids on the spectrum who are super deficient in a lot of the key minerals like molybdenum or manganese or whatever it may be. Different ones for different people.
And it's so easy to. Remember, this is a product that first came out in 1897. Okay, there is a body of information on what it did in the last 120 years that people are tired reading about it. I mean, it's so fantastic. I mean, I call it one of the 3 best medicines in the history of life.
But we, as at least in the U.S. and Americas, we don't have access. I don't think that we have easy access to those documents or the research that you talked about, because this came out of France and maybe it's popular in Europe or had been.
But I have to be honest with you that this is a profound product. It's going to sound a little corny. This is a profound product that is not well liked by the pharmaceutical forces. It is that profound a product. Remember that this product was used as a blood plasma replacement in both world wars. You can imagine.
That worked well.
That works better than saline. it is feared. It throughout its history, it has been attacked, annihilated, etc., by interests that find it threatening. So, we as a company have been attacked ourselves quite ruthlessly and paid a lot of money to maintain the presence of this product in America. So that's one of the reasons we have to be careful. But for people, if you would like to do this, I have what's called the significant download. It's a list of about 10 things. If you would like to host that to anyone who writes in is interesting, I'll provide it to you. You can send it and let people be amazed at this information.
And what is it's the significant download? What is that again? What's contained in it?
It's a list of documents that explains the history, the science, and the application of marine plasma and what it really means in great detail.
Okay, how about we do this?
Go ahead.
We're doing it a little on the fly. How about you give me your presentation again, and we will put a link to this document that you're talking about so that people can just click the link here and get the presentation. And then let's say at the end of your presentation, we'll put a link to where you can get the significant documentation. So if there's practitioners listening or people, I know some moms are like super researchers and you just want to dig into this a little bit more and see how this can be beneficial, go for it. And then Robert, if people want to use this product, what do they do? How do they use it? Where do they find it?
Well, it has many uses. I've been using it today because I was doing so much talking in the last 2 days. I've been just using it. You can see that this is there's actually two kinds, Luminara. One is the kind of, we call it the doctor's version, that's in double tip and you break the glass. One is the one that we mostly sell to the autism community, and you just, it's more, what can I say?
User tab you take off?
You just peel off that tip. But I kind of sometimes like this one because I can use it to shoot in my throat. And
you just tap it and then a couple drops.
Yeah, and I made it. I'm happy to have made it through this interview. But you can use this as a mineralizer for water. Okay. And soon this will be coming out in larger volumes.
Okay, and then right now, if someone wanted to order it, would they go to Purative?
They would go to Purative, or you can purchase it also for those of people who use the Quicksilver Scientific site to order products. Okay, they are also sell exactly the same thing.
Okay, so I think you have to be a practitioner. They do have retail on Quicksilver. So check it out there. And I think there was so much more I wanted to get into about how that could benefit. But I think, like you said, it's kind of like water. It's the next best thing to water because it's remineralizing and giving your all your 6 million biochemical reactions that happen every second. It's giving them kind of fuel to work better and for your cells to communicate.
When you see the science and what it really means, I mean, people normally just don't talk about and learn about the elements of the periodic table and their role. But I believe me that your body uses every single one of them when they're present.
Right.
And remember that ketone has been a medicine in Europe in the physician's desk reference for 75 straight years.
So basically it's like a prescribed drug.
Exactly. It was a prescribed thing right along with all the other pharmaceuticals. And in 1999, they knew they couldn't go globally as a medicine. They wouldn't be able to afford it. They couldn't join that club, as you know. So they decided to downgrade it to a dietary supplement. Excellent.
So that's Ketone Ocean Water, and go check it out on Purative or Quicksilver.
And the other one's called Quintessential. They're kind of the user-friendly package.
The user-friendly one is Quintessential. All right, and we're going to look for bigger packages, and maybe you can let me know when that happens because we can also put that message out,
So
at least
let
to
me
our
ask
listeners
you a
here.
question, and it may be one you prefer cutting off. That question is, I would be happy to take through you the questions about water from 10 people and answer them. Would that benefit your audience?
Yeah, why don't, if people
It's like
want
an
to ask.
invitation. I'll take 10 people. I wouldn't be able to handle more because I get another 100 every month. But somebody who's in trouble and really wants to get an answer, I know how frustrating it can be to listen to something like this and you go, wait, I got to ask you this. So I'm willing to take 10 questions and I'll take the responsibility of answering them.
Great. And the best way I think to do that is to go to my Facebook page, which is Autism Transformed. So go on to Facebook, like my page, Autism Transformed, and then we can have that discussion there. I'm pretty sure we'll figure out a way to set it up so that people can post that and that you can then go and answer that. And and we might and then everyone can see it, and then we might have some really lively discussion. So if 10 people have that question, if one person has a question, maybe 100 people have that same question.
Exactly. I love it.
Yeah, let's do that.
Beautiful solution. You're much more advanced in the Facebook scene than I am.
Well, social media just grabs people, so let's use it. I know we went over an hour, and I appreciate your time, and I appreciate your expertise, your knowledge, your wisdom. Thank you so much for sharing so much with us. And thank you, listeners, for listening.
You're very welcome, and thank you, listeners.